Sand stung our eyes. Sam and I leaned against each other as the windstorm buffeted our clothes. More than once it nearly knocked us to the ground as we trudged back to camp, coughing up muddy spit every step of the way. The once distant wind grew in intensity, howling through the valley in a deafening shriek, before softening back into a prolonged wail. I wondered with dismay where the sun had gone. All we had was a communication tent's yellow glow to guide our path. The satellite dish shuddered under the storm's abuse before snapping off its base and cartwheeling out of sight. Orange expedition tents, still waiting to be taken down, rolled away like strange geometric tumbleweeds. The terrifying thought that we'd been left behind raced through my mind as we burst through the tent's flapping door.
Sam, Derrick, where the hell have you guys been?
We had to leave something in the tomb, I coughed, wiping sand from my watery eyes.
Hey, stop that. You want to scratch a cornea or something?
Jorge stood from the flickering computer monitor and grabbed something from the table. He handed me a bottle of water, and I rinsed the gritty sand from my eyes. They were still stinging as I handed Sam the bottle, only now the chaos unfolding around me was in plain view. Electric lights swayed drunkenly overhead. Equipment sat in haphazard piles on the work table, and loose leaves of paper littered the floor. A flat-screen monitor lay on the floor, displaying a fragmented image, while the other side on the work table, a download bar slowly filling in.
You guys made it back just in time. Everybody else is in the dining tent, getting ready to hike out of this place. The only reason I'm in here is Felix asked me to back up the computer files.
Sam handed the water bottle back to me, and I took a drink. It tasted just like river water. I spat the muddy mix from my mouth. Jorge cursed at the computer struggling to transfer files. I got up and helped Sam to her feet. Jorge put on a dust mask and goggles and gestured to the small box beside him.
There's some extras in there for you guys to put on. What took you so long anyways? Felix says all you were supposed to do was leave a coin in there. What'd you do? Go down into the pit and have an unwrapping party?
Sam shot me a glance. Her eyes were bloodshot from the sleep deprivation, irritated by sand, but they also seemed taken aback. Surprised at George's halfway right guess aside, she must have understood how it felt to witness something you can't explain without sounding insane. Let's just say our project officer dropped in on us, I said.
So that's where that jerk-off went. Felix is looking for him too.
A pop-up message announced the file transfer was finished, and Jorge unplugged the hard drive. Sam and I masked up and watched him hustle over to the cigar-shaped ROV nestled between the Pelican cases, and pulled a similar hard drive from the tail section. He muttered something to the red machine and patted it affectionately before getting back to his feet and stuffing both hard drives into a backpack propped up against the table. He was about to sling it over his shoulders when the lights in the tent faltered before going out entirely.
Hey, come on you guys, we gotta get out of here.
We donned our own goggles and followed. Stepping through the tent's flapping door, the storm was raging outside with more intensity than ever. Lightning strikes cast dim light on our surroundings. Thunder followed, muffled by the wind's fury, as the not-so-distant wall of sand clawed at the sky over the valley walls. The lightning had the effect of a slow strobe light as we trundled over the uneven sand toward the dining tent. Shadows of other archaeologists filing hurriedly out of the dining tent, moving with frightened uncertainty, formed a crooked line. One of the forms stopped outside the tent door and ushered the others through. As we got closer, I could tell it was Felix.
Derrick, he shouted. Do you know where James went? I haven't been able to find him anywhere.
He went back to the tomb, back into the mummy pit.
What the hell for?
My jaw hung agape under the mask. Condensation already covered my lips as I struggled for words. I don't know. Felix threw up his hands in defeat.
We don't have time to go back for him or anyone else. The storm is closing in faster than we ever expected. Before we lose contact, headquarters said evacuation efforts are being sent to the lifts. We need to get there as fast as we can.
In the dusty haze over Felix's shoulder, one of the crew members was walking down the line, pausing at each person for a moment before passing on.
Here, Felix said, handing each of us a carabiner. Fasten these around your belts and hook them onto the climbing rope. I don't want anybody getting lost. Derrick, do you mind bringing up the rear?
The archaeologist, panning out the rope, reached us and handed my supervisor the knotted end of the line.
It'll be up to you to make sure nobody slips off the line.
I nodded understanding and hooked my carabiner around my leather belt and threw the figure-8 knot at the end of the rope. Sam took the spot directly in front of me, and Jorge found a spot a few people ahead of her. Felix walked ahead, checking everyone's connection to the lifeline, before he was so obscured by dust I couldn't tell him apart from the jumble of nondescript figures stretching toward the trailhead. I cast a glance over my shoulder at the hateful black cliffs towering over the mouth of the tomb. Sam caught me, and I tried playing it off with a wordless shrug. Up to this point, I hadn't had time to consider what crawled through the Serdab and down the mummy pit. I told myself it didn't matter. I had Sam right in front of me, and I could protect her if it gave chase. As the rope tugged against my belt, it consoled me knowing we were putting distance between us and that thing. The dense thicket of acacia trees was like nothing I remembered. The green canopy that shaded us when we blazed the trail to the site was now stripped bare by the raging storm. The only thing swaying overhead now were thorn-covered branches reaching across the narrow path. Wiry underbrush shuddered against each new gust. With slow progress following the trail, twisted and wound its way around the worst of the thickets and the crevasses littering the valley floor. It could be hard to follow at the best of times. With near zero visibility and sand drifts consuming the footworn trail, I had no idea how Felix was able to pick our path forward with any degree of certainty. The last traces of the sun were gone, and the dust in the air transformed our surroundings into itching, muddled shades of browns and tans. Distant figures appeared black. Dim light shined from the team members wearing headlamps, but these were powerless to illuminate anything much further away than the next person in line. Closest thing to color left in that sepia hell was Sam's red hair fluttering wildly in front of me. Occasionally, our rope got tangled or snagged on thorn branches as we navigated around fallen trees. Progress slowed to a barely perceptible crawl as we picked our way through the whipping thorn branches. Moments like that, while waiting for the line to start moving, my eyes were drawn to the underbrush. Even without leaves, the thickets of acacia saplings had branches too dense to see through. The unwanted image of the dark form stalking our procession, similar to the scene in the tomb's mosaics, flitted through my mind. Near total darkness, combined with the constant swaying of the underbrush, made the delusion more believable than I cared to admit. I tried ignoring these thoughts, writing them off as my imagination ran wild. But my mind would invariably gravitate back to the mummy pit, James's rituals, the Ka statue's glowing eyes, and that was to say nothing of the shadowy form that emerged from the Serdab. I witnessed all this. Try as I might, I couldn't rationalize any of it away. And bringing up the back of the line, I had a terrifying sense of vulnerability. If anything followed us, I was completely exposed. We trudged on. My lungs burned from the exertion. Condensation seeped around my mask's edges, leaving muddy trails down my throat. It was a constant battle, brushing sand from the depleted filter, only to have it clog up again minutes later. I had no idea where we were on the trail. I wondered more than once if we were lost. The wind howled louder. Sam trembled in front of me as the onslaught of wind reached one crescendo after another. My eyes were drawn once more to the underbrush, this time to my left. It wasn't the random movement of branches tossed by the storm. They shook violently, as if something were moving through them. Sam jerked her head in the same direction. She'd seen it too. She glanced over her shoulder at me and shouted something through her clogged mask. Her words were lost in a useless puff of dust, but I saw fear in her eyes. I didn't have time to respond before we rounded a small bend in the trail and entered a clearing. Oddly, the storm abated for a moment, long enough for me to realize where we were. This was the halfway point. My relief at not being lost faltered when the rope went slack. For a moment I thought it was another fallen tree, blocking our path, until the rope went completely limp. I frowned and stepped aside to get a better look at what had stopped us. Thoughts of escaping close at hand were suddenly dashed. Icy chills shot through my veins when I caught sight of the black humanoid figure standing in Felix's headlamp. The thing towered over him. The lifeline went taut once again as team members closest to Felix bolted in different directions. They were trying to flee, but only succeeded in getting themselves tangled in the lifeline, frantically trying to unclasp themselves. Felix was left frozen in terror when the thing moved. It closed the gap between them in clumsy, rapid steps. Felix screamed over the wailing storm as the thing lifted him off his feet and sank its teeth into his throat. Red mist hung in the air as it came down on the Silence Man's convulsing body. It all happened so quickly, the members at the front of our party panicked. Jerking against the rope, now anchored to a dead man, trying to get away, Some stumbled over themselves, others got tangled in the rope, and I gasped for my carabiner, not wanting to be trampled by the wave of fleeing archaeologists. I unclasped it from my belt and dropped the carabiner.
Sam, unfasten yourself!
I shouted, but my words were lost as the storm's wails regained their fury. Sam stood in front of me, frozen in horror. I grabbed her by the back of her belt and pulled her behind me, catching a glimpse of her terrified face. I grabbed the rope and tried to pull the end through, only for the figure 8 knot to snag on the opening of Sam's carabiner. I snatched the climbing device and started loosening the locking sleeve.
Sam, get off the line! We need...
My words were cut short as the panicked team members slammed into me. I was knocked to the ground and had to roll to avoid the stampede of trampling feet. Before I could regain my footing, I saw Sam's mop of red hair being carried away by the mob of fleeing team members. A painfully familiar pang of guilt swept through me at the sight of her outstretched hand. Somewhere behind me, the thing's inhuman shrieks echoed through the valley. I was left to cope with the fact that there was nothing I could do. Glancing over my shoulder, the thing pounced onto one of the fallen archaeologists. It was only a matter of time before it came after me. I had to get to Sam, but seeing the dig team bottlenecked, fighting each other to get out of the clearing, I knew I didn't stand a chance of making it through the only exit. No, not the only exit. I scrambled to my feet and raced towards the tree line. Fears of hidden snakes and thorned foliage vanished in the wake of something immeasurably worse as I shielded my face and leapt into the thick brush. Sharp thorns ripped my clothes, pierced my skin, but with the thing screeching in the clearing once more, I couldn't stop. I tried weaving around scrub brush and dodging tree limbs, but it was useless. I felt the distinct sensation of slamming my knee into the branch of a fallen tree, but I kept going. I don't know how far I ran. In my mind, I had the vague idea of circling back to the path, avoiding the thing, but these thoughts were interrupted by the odd sensation of weightlessness, similar to when I lowered myself into the mummy pit. Jagged stone walls enveloped me, and I realized I was falling. I don't know how long I floated in darkness. It might have been minutes or hours, but the dreamlike haze shifted into shades of brown. I felt the sickening sensation once more of sinking through water. In the distance, a slender black figure crept into view. My movements were slow as I fought against the water, trying to flee the thing. That's when a distant voice calling my name came to me, over and over, like a whisper in my ear.
Derrick! Derrick! Derrick!
The sensation of water, real water, pouring over my face jolted me back to consciousness. I awoke to a shadowy figure hunched over me. I cried in terror and kicked myself back away from it. Stabbing pain shot through my right knee, and I yelled louder. That's when a bandaged hand covered my mouth and I heard a familiar voice.
"Be quiet. That thing's still lurking around up there,"
Sam said. My eyes adjusted to the scant moonlight, and I got a better look at Sam and her tattered clothes. I rested my head onto the bed of gravel and sand beneath me in relief. Where are we?
"Remember those fissures they briefed us about back in Cairo? Well, you seem to have found one."
I winced at the sharp pain in my knee as I sat up. Feeling out the rest of my body, I was surprised my knee was the only serious injury I'd received. The slightest movement or least pressure sent sharp pain through the joint. Sam took one of my arms and turned it over in her hands, removing the occasional thorn.
"Odds of finding you was quite simple, really. I saw you running this way after I was carried away by the fleeing mob. I broke free from them and hid behind some fallen trees until that thing moved along. After that, I stayed behind the tree line until I came across your path. You left behind quite a trail of broken sticks and branches, and anyway, I followed them, and well, here we are. I'm so glad you're all right."
I winced as Sam pulled a small thorn from my wrist, before eyeing my pant leg's blood-soaked knee. I wasn't ready to see the damage. I turned my attention to the fissure's jagged rim, about 10 or 12 feet above us. A sparse trickle of sand and the occasional small rock blew over the edge. For the first time I noticed the far-off sound of the sandstorm. Is the storm over?
"No, not quite, but it has dissipated quite a lot."
Sam moved on from my arms to my legs, and instinctively, I pulled away as she rested a probing hand on my injured knee.
"Stop that! I'm only trying to help."
Her eyes met mine for a brief moment. She gathered handfuls of my pant leg on either side of its torn knee. I gritted my teeth and looked away as she ripped the hole in the fabric to reveal my battered leg. A large thorn protruded from the underside of my kneecap, and I didn't like looking at it. I could write off the bruised purple appearance as a trick of the moon's pale light, but the swelling and visibly dislocated kneecap were unbearable. Sam insisted on pulling the thorn out. I fought back cries of pain with each unsuccessful attempt. When her hands were too slick with blood to try again, I suggested snapping the thorn off where it stuck out. Sam reluctantly agreed, and we wrapped the area in cloth torn from my t-shirt.
Effing hell,
Sam whispered.
Doesn't seem like anything is broken, really. Do you think you can put any weight on it? Maybe if I get you a stick or something?
It was agony just moving the leg. I couldn't imagine walking on it. I'm not so sure I need to go anywhere, I said.
Why ever not? You can't stay here. Not with that thing on the loose.
Whatever it is, I'm not any worse off staying down here. Besides, it's not like you need me slowing you down. Sam frowned, obviously dissatisfied with my answer. We don't even know what that thing is, I said.
What difference does it make? It came out of the tomb, didn't it?
That doesn't tell us anything about what it is. The Egyptians probably didn't even know. You said it yourself, the Ka statue didn't even resemble Egyptian art from that period. And why would they hide it under the floor tiles?
I can't begin to guess why they bothered hiding it so well. And I did say that about the Ka statue, didn't I?
Sam bit her lip and looked at me, as if she were weighing something, deciding whether or not to share. Finally, she broke the silence.
I've had a number of strange dreams lately. Nightmares, really. They've all been so vivid, as if I were in the tomb when they placed the sarcophagus inside and sealed it. The high priests were frightened of it, and I heard them whispering words of the underworld. The more I think about it, the more I'm reminded of Sekhmet, the goddess of wrath. I can't believe I never made the connection earlier. After all, she's portrayed as...
Somewhere in the valley above, a shrill cry of someone being devoured echoed. I didn't recognize their voice. No one sounds like themselves, not when they're being eaten. Sam scooted close to me, under the cover of the fissure in the wall, and clung to me as the screams for help went unanswered and ceased. Neither of us spoke, not for several minutes. You said that thing's like Sekhmet, I said, breaking the silence at last. How can we ward it off? Or kill it?
It doesn't work that way,
Sam whispered, tears rimming her eyes.
That priest would have used incantations and maybe offered sacrifices, but they would have balked at a mortal killing one of their gods.
We debated amongst ourselves, weighing the pros and cons of each course of action. Staying in the fissure seemed safer than dodging whatever was lurking in the valley above. Sam pointed out that even if we could have waited out the storm, there was no way of knowing when someone would come looking for us, or if that thing would move on after picking off the rest of the dig team. She said moving would only get harder for me as my adrenaline from my injury wore off. I didn't buy her logic, but glancing at the fresh wrappings on my knee, already soaked in blood, I realized time might not be on my side. If I kept bleeding like this, I'd be dead either way. Sam insisted continuing towards the extraction point was our only chance. Reluctantly, I agreed. Sam fashioned a crude brace for my knee from sticks littering the bottom of the fissure. It wasn't easy, but she helped me to my feet. Resting weight on the joint was painful but bearable.
There now. That's not so bad, is it?
I guess not. I lied. I took a few test strides and tried not to wince at the stabbing pain radiating from my knee. Sam frowned, looking into my eyes. I could tell she knew the truth.
That's fab,
she said, forcing an unconvincing smile across her own face.
Let's crack on now, shall we?
With that, she walked a short distance to a rope dangling into the fissure and climbed up, pausing briefly near the top to peek over the edge. Once she was sure the coast was clear, Sam hauled herself over the edge. I limped to the rope, pondering its length before coiling it around my good leg. Letting the injured leg hang limp was the closest thing I'd felt so far to actual pain relief. A couple feet from the top, Sam reached over the edge and took my hand before pulling me from the fissure. I collapsed on my back, panting from the exertion of the climb. The moon lit our surroundings in a blue indigo light. The sandstorm's wail had diminished to a distant, droning whistle. Visibility was dramatically better than before the encounter with the thing, but mites of airborne sand still irritated my eyes. I remember the goggles hanging from my neck and put them back on. Glancing in the direction of the clearing, it wasn't an obvious trail, but you could tell pretty easily where I'd made my escape by all the trampled sticks and snapped branchlets dangling from their bark from acacia trees. The clearing beyond looked blue in the moonlight. Drifts of sand slowly swallowed abandoned gear. I shuddered when I noticed Felix's body. His arms spread out at unnatural angles. Black sand pooled around his head where he'd bled out. "Do you think we should check his body?" I asked. "Whatever for?" Maybe he had a satellite phone or GPS on him. Maybe he had something we could use to call for help. Sam looked pensive in the moonlight and glanced at the short distance between us and his corpse. "Alright, I'll run and check. You stay here." "I'm not letting you go out there by yourself." "You are if you want that sat phone. I won't be but a minute." I didn't say anything else. I just watched as Sam picked a path through the underbrush, being careful not to step on sticks, snap branches, or make any noise that might give her away. I listened intently for any sign of movement as she dashed across the sand and knelt next to Felix's body. Sam shuddered as she laid hands on his corpse, before turning him over and rifling through his pockets. She pulled out something that looked green before rushing back to the tree line. She shuddered as she dropped to the ground beside me in our hiding spot. "Are you alright?" "I'm fine," Sam said, breathing heavily. "God, he was like a dried-up husk." I could tell she wanted to put the experience behind her, so I didn't press the matter. Instead, I waited until she broke the silence. "No sat phone, I'm afraid, but he did have this." Sam held a yellow and black GPS. Coagulated blood covered the screen before she wiped it off, revealing an SOS signal was transmitting. A timer indicated the call went out before the dig team ever left camp. I frowned before navigating to another screen. The map was crude. I was disappointed by its complete lack of topography. This meant more fissures could be hidden along the way, but there were waypoints marking the path to the lifts, with enough clarity for us to find our way out while avoiding them. "Here, I thought you might be able to use this," Sam interrupted, handing me an acacia stick with most of the thorns broken off. "Now let's get moving." I nodded and followed her through the dense underbrush. Thorns left fresh scratches on our arms and legs. Each step was pain. Sand in the air was more of a nuisance at this point than anything. It may have been the middle of the night, but it was easier blazing a new trail for ourselves through the thickets than it had been following the tug of the lifeline with the storm in full force. I thought of Felix and how easily the thing had picked him from his feet and killed him. It had done that while hungry and weak. Skulking along under the cover of acacia trees, I had to wonder what it was capable of now that it killed at least 3 of us. Sometimes the only way forward was to crawl. Somehow it was more painful than just limping along with my walking stick. I became gradually aware of the blood trickling past Sam's field dressing and pooling in my boot. Sam insisted we stop long enough to add more makeshift bandages. There wasn't much left in my tattered shirt sleeves, so she tore strips from her own. We thought it might be a good idea to pack the wound, but it wasn't. As soon as Sam pressed the wadded-up cloth against the back of the thorn, my vision went white. I ground my teeth together to stifle the screams of pain, but it was useless. Sam must have realized that this was doing more harm than good, because she abandoned this method and just wrapped the wound tighter. We kept going. We encountered the occasional fissures, but nothing as abrupt as the first one. Trees and brush usually gave way to rock and sand well before the cavernous plunge. Luckily, most were small enough to navigate around without much trouble. There was one, however, that was too large for that. I remembered it from the LiDAR scans of the valley, mainly due to its unusual size. It would have taken us a mile out of our way just to get around it. We were forced to skirt the edge between it and the trail. Just as we were in that narrow squeeze, barely wide enough for a car to pass through, between the open trail and the drop to the bottom, I caught the unwelcome sound of wind picking up. Foliage rustled and branches snapped. Sam shot me a terrified look as the storm gained intensity and kicked up fresh dust. We dropped immediately behind the scant cover offered by the trunk of a fallen tree. Only then did I realize the movement wasn't the thing coming after us. It was on the other side of the trail. I heard labored breathing and uttered curses. My stomach sank when Jorge burst from the brush across from our hiding spot and tripped onto the path. He was trying to get back to his feet when the tops of the trees behind him bowed under the strength of the storm, ripping through the valley once more. I wanted to call out to him, yell for him to run, hide. I never got the chance. A skeletal black arm reached through the thickets and caught hold of Jorge by the ankle and dragged him screaming back into the thicket. The wind howled with renewed ferocity. Before the sand completely blotted out my view of the moonlight, I caught a glimpse of red, bloody mist in the air as the thing ravaged Jorge's body. Sam and I lay there, pinned down by terror as the blood-curdling scream reverberated through the dusty air and howling wind. We were powerless to do anything but cower and listen to the thing devour our friend. Tree limbs cracked as the thing abandoned its kill, peered deeper into the darkness on the opposite side of the trail. It wasn't until the wind's howls died and the occasional gust either of us dared move. Muddy tears streamed from the corner of Sam's eyes as she looked at me with terrified blue eyes. We stared at one another through the dim light before wordlessly agreeing to move on. We crept along, more cautiously now, only standing when there was no other way to clear an obstacle. Every snapped twig or rustled branch made us freeze. The sharp pain I felt when Sam first rescued me was replaced by a dull, persistent throb. Lightheadedness came and went as I struggled along. I had no idea how much further we had to go. More than once the echoed cries of another team member, followed by the shrieks of that thing, spurred us on. Eventually the thickets thinned out enough for us to see the trail. My joy realizing we were almost at the end melded with feelings of unease at the sight of abandoned personal effects and the glimmer of dried blood beneath the dwindling moonlight. Tumbling through the last of the thorn bushes, we found ourselves under what was left of a crooked acacia tree. Like the others in the valley, its canopy was largely denuded of any foliage, but it still provided some concealment. Gazing through the tree's thorny branches, I could hardly believe my eyes. It was the lift platform. It was similar in size and appearance to scaffolding you might find hanging from high-rises in a city for washing windows. But this one's steel-grated floor rested on the valley floor, waiting. I was almost more excited by the yellow glow of truck headlights shining over the cliff's edge. We'd parked the expedition vehicles up there after driving through the desert to the valley. Someone else must have made it out. That or rescue efforts had arrived. I didn't care which, because the only thing standing between us and the help we so desperately needed was about 100 yards of sand and loose gravel. We sat in silence for a moment. Dust devils skittered through this final clearing. Sam gazed appraisingly at the small distance ahead of us. Her eyes that brimmed with excitement watching Lawrence of Arabia stole glances of me across the campfire at night. Her eyes that laughed with her too big a smile stared emotionlessly ahead. Since leaving Felix's body, neither of us had ventured from the cover of trees, and now it was our only option.
I think we should make a run for it,
Sam said. You know how to run the lift? I asked, glancing disdainfully at my knee. She looked at me, incredulous.
Of course I do, don't you?
Yeah, I paused. Just, whatever happens, I want you to keep running, alright? Don't stop. For God's sakes, don't wait for me.
I've already helped you this far, Sam said, with a frown. I'm not going anywhere without you, and that's that.
I'd known Sam long enough to know there's no arguing with her. I gave a final sigh, staring off at the sheer cliffs, while she helped me to my feet. I steadied myself, leaning heavily on the stick I dragged along most of the night.
Just remember this isn't a race,
Sam said, looking me over.
Do you need me to help you?
I'm fine, I said, hoping it was true. I tried putting weight on my bad leg and immediately felt the dull throb give way to something sharper, more intense. My facial expression must have betrayed the level of pain I felt because Sam's expression morphed into one of concern.
Quite sure you're all right?
I'm sure, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I'm ready when you are. Sam glanced through the tree limbs. scanning to make sure the thing wasn't nearby, waiting to give chase. Once she was satisfied, she turned to face me.
Ready?
Set, I nodded.
Let's go.
We bolted from the cover of the tree and Sam grabbed my arm, dragging me along after her. It was the fastest I'd managed to hobble all night. Even my good knee was skinned raw, and my pant leg chafed with each step. Each step of my right leg brought a painful reminder that a thorn was still wedged into the joint. I kept up with Sam as best I could, but it was easy to tell that she was holding back. Before I could urge her to run ahead, wind whipped my back with renewed fury. Sand sliced at my skin, and the almost forgotten sandstorm was back, howling with as much intensity as ever. My skin crawled when I heard the inhuman screech from behind us. Sam looked over her shoulder at me, eyes wide with terror. I was too afraid to follow her gaze. She shouted something at me. I couldn't hear her, but I could read the word fresh on her lips. Run. Adrenaline pulsed through my body. I forgot the state of my legs and ran for all I was worth. Still, I knew I was slowing Sam down. Thoughts of the thing from the tomb catching us, killing us both, like I had Felix and Jorge race through my mind. All because Sam refused to leave me behind. I wanted to shout at her, tell her to run ahead, save herself, but the storm was too loud for that. Sand burned my vision. I remember the goggles around my neck, but I didn't even have a free hand to put them on. The lift was barely visible through the storm, and despite the ever-shrinking distance between us and the platform, it seemed further away than ever. I choked on the dust and struggled to breathe. Still, I willed my legs to carry me over the sand and loose gravel. Faster. We were less than 100 feet away when Sam pulled away and hurtled over the platform railing. I knew I couldn't lift my leg high enough for that. When the time came, I ended up flopping over the railing. I came down hard on the middle grate floor and some abandoned excavation tools. It knocked the air from my lungs and sent fresh pain through my already wrecked knee. Sam scrambled the control panel. She twisted the master power switch to on and pulled the control lever to up. Contacts shut. Steel cables rang as they were pulled taut by electric motors humming overhead. For a moment, Sam's eyes met mine. I couldn't hear it, but I knew a laugh was escaping her lips as that too big smile worked its way across her face. We had made it. Against all the odds, we were getting out of that terrible place. Our moment of triumph was cut short when I looked back toward the trail and saw the blackened form approaching us. A towering wall of sand whirling behind it, rising in time with the entity's outstretched arms. I grabbed hold of the railing before screaming as loud as I could.
Sam, hold on to something!